Our topic today is sick days and also favorite foods. So, Evan, do you have a favorite food that you like to eat when you're not feeling well?
Oh, when I get sick, I'm not much of an eater. I'm much more of a sort of lay around and drink fizzy water or some kind of hot drink or something like that. I'm not a huge eater when I'm sick. What about you?
I would say probably chicken soup. My partner Richard always swears by chicken soup. He actually thinks it has medicinal properties. I'm not sure I really believe that chicken soup has medicinal properties, but it does feel good. It's a feel good food when you're not feeling your greatest.
I know one food that does have medicinal properties,
What's
and
that?
those are the Hostess powdered donuts, which Hostess is owned by J.M. Smuckers. And our guest on today's show is one of the in house lawyers at J.M. Smuckers. I think that's apropos of our talk today. And we could do a whole episode on the Smuckers brand of products like the peanut butter, the jelly, the Uncrustables. I personally could go on for a long time about the little white powdered donuts, the donuts, but you'll have to keep listening to get into that in today's episode.
Yummy. Welcome to Hiring to Firing, the podcast. I'm Tracey Diamond, labor and employment attorney at Troutman Pepper, and I'm here with my co-host, Evan Gibbs. Together, we tackle all employment and HR issues from hiring to firing. Today, our guest is Lisa Whittaker, Director and Managing Counsel, Employment and Labor Law at the J.M. Smucker Company. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule today to join us, Lisa. Let's start out by having you tell us a little bit about J.M. Smucker, as well as its holdings and your role in the company.
Yes. So I am the director and managing counsel for employment and labor law. I work closely with our HR teams, our employee relations teams, leave and accommodations teams, as well as our operations folks. So including plant managers and bakery managers, as well as site HR. I help to advise on policies and procedures, help to establish standard operating procedures, as well as working with our officer leadership team and executive leadership team on all things reorganizations and other situations that may need advice and counsel.
Excellent.
I was just curious, were you in private practice before you went in-house?
Actually, I was in the in-house at a retailer, two retailers before joining Smucker and going into CPG world.
Very cool. Very cool.
Do you see a big difference in terms of the type of work you do working in this world versus working in retail?
Absolutely. Retail is so fast-paced, yet very futuristic thinking. So, my memory serves two seasons before. So, for instance, this is spring. The team would be working on next summer's lineup, traveling to Europe, looking at the trends, setting the colors. So very futuristic thinking and hoping that they are spot on about what we as a consumer are going to like several seasons from now. Very fast paced, sales, 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 very competitive industry. CPG, with Smucker being, a Fortune 500 that's been around for, I think, 127 years will be the celebration this year. Stable company, so many offerings, including jams, jellies, preserves, Jif peanut butter, milk bone biscuits, and of course the ever popular Uncrustable. Just a stronger foundation, not as much change as you see in retail. But yeah.
My kids loved the Uncrustables growing up. That would be in their lunchbox every single day. What would you say your favorite product is?
Whew, I love Jif peanut butter. But I would say my go-to is probably the strawberry preserves. The jam is good, jelly is
A
good,
fine
but the
choice.
preserves, yes.
Yeah, tastes very fresh.
A fine choice and a great combo with the peanut butter too.
There you go.
Just so that the audience is aware, before we started the podcast, I professed my love for the Hostess donuts. So that's my personal favorite, are the little white powder donuts. They're like crack. I open those things and I cannot stop eating those. If I open a bag, I'm probably going to eat the whole thing in one sitting. It's dangerous. It is dangerous. So I only buy them a few times a year, but when I do, it's all out.
I love
Um,
the chocolate packets that only has 4 or 5 in it.
yeah, see, that's the way to go.
There needs to be some portion control. Not that that really falls in the portion control.
It's some form of portion control, at least.
That's a
Maybe
good
too much
strategy.
still, but yeah.
I'll have to remember that. Next time I'm really craving them, I should get the smaller pack.
Yeah.
So, Evan, do you want to kick us off on our topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So today we're not talking about baked goods and jams,
Aw.
even though we could talk about that all day. We're actually going to talk about sick days, which, of course, with the COVID pandemic, occurring over the past few years has really become a timely topic. And we've had to develop a lot of new policies and nuances around sick days. And to kickstart our discussion today, we're going to play a clip from season 3, episode 2 of the show Parks and Recreation. I don't know if you've seen it, Parks and Rec, but this particular episode is aptly called Flu Season. So this show, in general, it follows the antics and relationships between a group of employees of a Parks and Recreation department in the fictional city of Pawnee, Indiana, including Leslie Knope, who is a really great main character. And in this particular episode, which came out in 2011, Leslie Knope's the deputy director, played by, of course, Amy Poehler. She has the flu, but she refuses to leave work. And I don't know about the two of you, but I've certainly been in that situation where you're not feeling great, but you also really don't want to get behind. So in the clip we're about to play, she's sitting in her office while the rest of the staff speaks to her through a conference phone from the next room. So let's listen to this clip.
We've developed a revenue sharing formula that will hopefully appeal to most business owners.
Leslie, go home. You're sick.
I'm not sick. It's just allergies. Come on, guys. Just let me in there.
No, you can't come in
You're
here.
not coming in.
No, Leslie, you look tired and you're all sweaty.
You look tired and you're all sweaty all the time. What's your excuse? You want to go there, Jerry?
No.
So this clip in particular rang so true for me because, my family jokes that I never believe it when I'm sick. I always say I have allergies. And so, I could be dying of the flu and I still think it's allergies. So I understand where Leslie Knope is coming from here.
That's really funny. I only recently, I can't remember if it was last year or 2022 was the first time that I actually got the flu. I'd had stuff that was, flu-ish, flu adjacent. And I got the real flu, and it was like, it was the worst. I didn't, people always talk about how bad it is, man. It really is pretty terrible when you get the actual flu. But we could talk, again, that's a topic we could talk about a lot about. But the actual legal question for today, do y'all think that employees have a different mindset about taking sick days than they did pre-COVID? Do you think that COVID sort of changed just generally, employees, I guess, take on using sick days?
I think it really cuts both ways. I think prior to COVID, when we did not have the level of technology and accessibility that we do now, folks would actually go home, take the sick day, lay down, relax, step away because they didn't have an option. They wouldn't just jump on a conference call maybe as readily as now. I feel like folks will just work from home and still work instead of truly resting and recuperating. I had a situation not too long ago where a person on my team was clearly sick and said, I'm just not feeling well. It was the flu. And so I think I'm going to take the afternoon and lay down. I'm like, yeah, I support that. Like, you're not going to get better if you don't lay down and relax. Well, the next morning I see, this coworker is online working away and I send a message, are you better today? Well, no, I feel terrible. My stomach's still a mess. I still have a headache. I still have a runny nose, but I just have so much work to do. So I'm just not going to get on any calls or get on camera, but I just got to get this work done. And so in my opinion, I think it cuts both ways. To your point, Evan, folks don't want to get behind. And now you can still be at home doing all the things, just maybe not joining calls and not falling behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like when you get sick, it's almost like, unless it's, really, really bad, you just can't function. It seems like a lot of times, at least for me, I've used feeling that way as sort of a justification to, not get on calls and not communicate directly with people, but to use it to catch up on all the other stuff that I'm behind on. It's almost like, I don't want to call it a free day, but it's a day where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sick. I can finally catch up on work. I can finally catch up on the actual work that I need to do, and I'm not on calls all day. So I think you're right. I think that the ability to work from home has definitely changed that dynamic for sure. What do you think, Tracey?
Well, I think that it, depends on the type of worker. First of all, not everybody has the ability to be able to work from home. But I think there's a couple of things here. On the one hand, I think employers are a little bit more empathetic to the concept of you're sick. We don't really want you to come into the office. You should really go home, whether it's to work from home or it's just to go home and be sick. I think before COVID, the sense I got was, well, if you're sick, you're just supposed to keep on going, and no one's going to believe you that you're really sick if you take too many sick days and you don't want to use them up. So there was this sort of implicit discouragement from taking sick days. And now, because there's just a little bit more of a better understanding of what the consequences can be if someone is contagious and they're around your other coworkers, I think that employers are more apt to say, if you are not feeling well, we don't want you here. Please go home, and really encouraging people to go home. But to Lisa's point and to your point, Evan, going home, if you have the ability to work from home, doesn't necessarily give you the day off. It just means that you're not going to give it to everybody else, but you're still sort of expected to get, the work is always going to be there. And for professionals, it just continues to pile up. And there's this sort of fear of, if I take that time off, I'm not going to be able to make it up. I think that that goes to this bigger issue of sort of the blurring of lines between personal lives and work lives, and how this feeling of always being on the hamster wheel and not being able to kind of shut down and separate yourself from work can sometimes be problematic and lead to burnout.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the reactions of the staff here to Leslie being ill are particularly funny here. For example, her coworker, Tom Haverford, who's played by Aziz Ansari in this next clip, he wears a motorcycle helmet and he sprays himself with hand sanitizer. But the reaction of Chris Traeger, who's played by Rob Lowe, is really the best. When we're talking about the Rob Lowe who has not aged in the last 30 years, I think.
That is so true.
Yeah, I looked him up before we play the clip. I'll note, I looked him up, and so he's 59. Yeah, I saw current pictures of him. It's like, oh my gosh, man, the guy looks exactly the same as he did in like the 90s and 2000s. But anyway, let's take a listen to this next clip.
I'm sorry, are you leaving? I thought we had a meeting.
No, we do. It's just I think it's a little chilly in here.
Are you okay? Your eyes are glassy.
Oh my God. Oh my. Is she sick? Are you sick?
No.
Yeah, she's sick. That's why I'm wearing this and misting myself with hand sanitizer.
I'm not sick. I just have allergies, okay? I took a Claritin and I threw that up. So I took another one, I threw that up, and then I took a third and it stayed down. I'm getting better.
All right, you're burning up.
You're burning up. What?
I have to get out of here. I have 2.8% body fat. My body's like a microchip. A grain of sand could destroy it. My body's a microchip.
Leslie, go home.
No, I can't. I can't go home. I have to get ready for the Chamber of Secrets.
Commerce.
If this meeting does not go perfectly, then the Harvest Festival is going to be over before it began. I cannot go home.
So in some companies, I've heard from clients that workers are afraid to take a sick day because the company doesn't give them many paid sick days, or they're afraid to incur, some folks use attendance points for taking a sick day. Lisa, how does it work at Smucker's?
Yeah, so we have 22 sites since the acquisition of Hostess. And to be honest, the attendance point calculation process varies from site to site. But you're spot on when you touch on the fact that the employees are afraid to miss work. And I don't know if it's necessarily because of the attendance points. I think it's because of the inability to be paid. And so they know, if I miss today, yes, they do have some sick days, especially in jurisdictions that require that we provide a given number of sick days, but they don't really want to use up their sick days unless they're really, really sick, or they feel like they can come to work, they can stay away from folks, and everything is going to be okay. And we really saw that during the pandemic, even though we were very clear about what was expected and the duty to test and quarantine, et cetera. We still had folks that came to work knowing they were sick or remained at work even after they started to feel symptoms. They didn't want to go home. And oftentimes it was someone else who let us know that a given worker was not feeling well or had a temperature. We had temperature check stations. And even if, I think we had an instance where someone still entered the workplace after it flashed red and let them know that they had a temperature. So Unfortunately, I think even though we provide a sufficient amount of sick days versus PTO days, and they're able to buy vacation days, weeks of vacation as well, I still think some folks come in even though they know they don't feel well. Maybe blaming it on allergies like Tracey.
It's a tough call, particularly in manufacturing. I see this a lot with attendance points in the manufacturing world. And on the one hand, there's always this feeling of on the part of the company that employees are abusing sick time and that they're taking days off just because they want to have more days off and that they're not really sick. And employers don't really want to be in the business of making judgment calls as to whether a person is sick or not. But on the other hand, they don't want employees coming to work when they're truly sick. And I'm not really sure what the answer is in terms of how to manage the middle in between those two extremes. But I do think that's a challenge that employers tend to face. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a clear answer. I really think it's sort of a case by case basis. I've seen, and I'm sure both of you have as well. I mean, there's so many different systems out there that companies use, whether it's a point system or whatever it is that they've decided to implement. And I think they all, at the end of the day, sort of face the same problems that you described, Tracey.
Agreed.
One of the things I think we're seeing in more current times than in, years past is, it used to be that sick days were just for employees' own illness. And now many, as Lisa pointed out, many jurisdictions require sick days, and they require those days to be used not just for the employee's own illness, but for family members' illnesses, for public school closures, that kind of thing. So I think that's something that we're seeing, the idea of sort of stretching the idea of what a sick day is and to encompass a bunch of other things. Do you think that goes too far, or do you think that that's the right way to go?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's the way of the world that we're currently living in. And I think it is really responsive to the fact that we know mental health issues continue to rise or are more prevalent, and or we're more willing to acknowledge mental health challenges, the level of stress that individuals are under. So to me, I think it makes sense. A sick day is a sick day is a sick day. And some mornings you wake up and if you're not feeling like it's going to be a day where you can pull it together, I'm in support of it. I think, again, kind of going back to the sickness and managing it and who judges whether you're sick or it's allergies. I think, again, who's to decide whether you're having a mentally healthy day or a mentally unhealthy day?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in that business. And also, is it because of a sick kid at home, or it's the employee's own illness? It's the employee's not going to be able to really get much done if they know that they're worried about their kid.
Exactly.
With the mental health days, I think that's definitely a trend in the right direction. I mean, I think that, the stressors of the modern workplace are very real, and the mental health toll is, something that's not talked about a lot. And so I think companies that are offering, a certain number of, mental health days a year, I think that sends the right message that, hey, we as a company, we recognize that you might not have the flu, but that's not the only time that you're really not well enough to work, and recognizing that there are other circumstances that are relevant and very, very real, I think is a step in the right direction to me.
Yeah, I think to piggyback on that as well, Evan, I think many of us realized when this pandemic started 4 years ago and we went home, we worked even longer days because there was
So
one
true.
thing that leaving the office provided. It was a break.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so the likelihood that you would schedule a happy hour or dinner or go pick up dinner for the family and truly just take a break, even if you logged back on later, was more real. It was more accepted. Whereas once we sit down at these desks at home, we're not getting up before 5:30, 6 o'clock, maybe like we once did, or we're logging back on or sitting on the couch and working longer hours as well. So to your point about the long work days and just the work stress, I think it's been amplified by the ability to work from home.
Yep. I totally agree.
So, Lisa, you alluded to this before when you talked about sort of mandated sick days. And as we all know, in many jurisdictions, there is a requirement to provide a certain amount of paid sick days for employees to use for, not only their own illness, but for various other reasons. But the problem I find is that the laws are not always consistent. So, for example, in Connecticut, employees are currently, under current Connecticut law, employees accrue sick days at the rate of 1 hour for every 40 hours worked, up to a maximum of 40 hours a year. In other states, many other states, the paid sick leave accrual rate is 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. And then there's also differences in a bunch of things, carryover, front loading, and whether or not the sick days can be used, for example, for mental health, wellness. When you're in a multi-state employer situation like you are, Lisa, and like many of our clients are, how do you keep track of it all? And do you have one policy, or do you kind of just have different policies in different jurisdictions?
We have a baseline policy, but then we have state addendums. Because to your point, Tracey, we have to make sure that we get it right for the given jurisdiction. So we make sure to outline that and provide that based on where folks work. And the system configuration is probably the trickiest, creating a different accrual or bucketing. Okay, so these three jurisdictions, it's 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. But yes, we have the baseline for the folks that work in a state where there is not a specific requirement, and then state addendums that outline the respective benefits.
That sounds like a good way to handle it. To your point before about how, burnout and work has gotten harder and there's more of it. These poor HR folks that are having to keep track administratively to what's become just a much more complicated world than what used to be, right?
I agree.
Yeah, seriously.
What do you think about unlimited PTO policies? That's sort of the other end of the spectrum that I see. Some clients have unlimited PTO. Do you think that that's hard to manage?
It's funny because we were just talking about this yesterday. My past life, both retailers went to the unlimited PTO for a number of reasons, including the fact that it was less liability on the books. As you know, when you pay out, Susie's got 7 weeks of vacation because she's been here 25 years. That 7 weeks of vacation days for Susie at her current salary is a lot of money.
Sure.
There's the financial benefit of not having it on the books. There's also the reality that folks really struggle to probably even take 3 weeks, maybe even 4, and truly step away from work, not checking email, not responding. And so, when we studied it at, both of my prior employers, we really discovered that there wasn't going to be a situation where employees were going to take advantage, because they still had to seek permission, advance permission to take vacation days. With sick days, there was a requirement, obviously, to notify as early as possible. But I was just recommending unlimited PTO the other day on a call.
There you go. I have seen some generational differences on the use of sick time or the use of PTO in general with unlimited PTO policies. And this is very anecdotal, but it seems to me what I'm seeing is that the older generations are less inclined to take enough time off when they have an unlimited policy because it feels too amorphous. And, what we were saying before about how there's always the work to be done, even when you're quote unquote off. They feel that, they won't be able to catch up and they may get in trouble if they take too much. But I'm seeing the newer generation, the ones that are just coming into the workforce, are all about the unlimited PTO and taking full advantage of that. So I think it'll be an interesting thing to watch as more generations sort of make their way into the office, the work environment.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So we have one more clip that I'd like to show. And to this point, before COVID, it was sort of a badge of honor and an expectation for managers, at least, to keep on working, even when they're sick. And in this next clip, you could see the reaction of the staff when Leslie will not let them cover for her, even though she's sick. So let's take a listen.
I find it a little insulting that you don't trust me to handle this.
It's not that I don't trust you, okay? It's just this Harvest Festival is my project. It's my career on the line. And I just need to make sure that I've done everything I can to make it work. Okay. It's showtime. Good evening, everyone. I'm Leslie Monster, and this is Nightline.
Lisa, just so you know, in this instance, the Adam Scott character and there's some other guy that's there are kind of like insulted. Like, do you think we can't handle this? You have the flu. You literally are falling on your face. Just let us take this Chambers of Commerce presentation and do it. Like, you're not giving us a chance to shine. Go be sick, kind of is their attitude. And she's like, no, this is just so important. And then she kind of pulls it together and gives the presentation. So, what do you think of Leslie's attitude here? Should she have let her staff handle the meeting?
Probably so. I mean, she did okay, but there's a real risk of, for example, I think of the analogous situation being that, I've got a court hearing and I've got to appear in front of a judge to argue some kind of motion, but I'm really sick. And it's like, how much is it going to impact my performance as opposed to letting like a senior associate handle the court hearing? And am I ultimately doing a disservice to whatever task it is by handling it when I'm sick? And it's a really tough call to make, especially as you're in sort of a management role. It's hard to, and if you're, a control freak like I am, and you feel like it's got to be done this certain way, it can be really hard to let go of the reins, even if you're sick. But I think that, at least for me, it would be good to remember that the next time I'm sick and there's something going on.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always that question, and the example that we set as leaders for the next generations, for our successors, when we struggle to relinquish a little control. And so I think if we're working daily to continue to provide opportunities for our direct reports to grow, learn, stretch, fail forward, pick them up, and start again, I think this attitude can become contagious and problematic. So especially that it was a presentation, even that she insisted on sitting in the room through the presentation, but allowed someone else to lead it and chimed in. But I think we just have to relinquish control, because we may be gone tomorrow. And the one goal we want to be able to say is, hey, I set so-and-so up for success. They may not know everything that I know, but they'll be able to learn it, and they'll be able to teach the next person coming behind them.
Such an important concept, and something that I think too often we forget in our own pursuit of success. I think this is a really good place to end. I want to thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today. Lisa, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Such an interesting conversation. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And please don't forget to check out our blog, hiringtofiring.law, and sign up for our podcast. You can subscribe so you won't miss an episode, and shoot us an email. Tell us what you think. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Copyright Troutman Pepper Hamilton Sanders, LLP. These recorded materials are designed for educational purposes only. This podcast is not legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individual participants. Troutman Pepper does not make any representations or warranties, express or implied, regarding the contents of this podcast. Information on previous case results does not guarantee a similar future result. Users of this podcast may save and use the podcast only for personal or other non-commercial educational purposes. No other use, including, without limitation, reproduction, retransmission, or editing of this podcast may be made without the prior written permission of Troutman Pepper. If you have any questions, please contact us at troutman.com.